Hello. Good morning. Good evening. Good day. Good afternoon. And aloha. Welcome back to another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, the Skinwalker review episode. So we're reviewing episode 5. We've got the usual crew here: Jazz Shaw, Rather Be Squidding, Jane, Kyle. Guys, how are we doing?
Doing well.
Doing good.
Excellent. You got that Alabama tan on you, I see. Rather Be Squidding.
Yeah,
How
it was an
Alabama?
exciting weekend.
Talking about it. We'll talk about it more tomorrow, but just to give the people a little sneak peek. What was fun?
Tons of amazing names. Great meeting. A bunch of people in the flesh that I've only met on the internet. It was a great time. A lot of interesting stuff going down there too. Got to meet John Alexander, who was featured today on Skinwalker Ranch, which was very, very cool.
We got to try and get John Alexander on the show. I know we've got some mutual friends, so I'll reach. I've never reached out to him, but I feel like he'd be a fun guy to talk to, right?
Yeah, he's definitely hard of hearing, so it's a little bit hard talking to him one-on-one, but maybe with some earphones on and the internet connection that could be resolved.
That sounds like a perfect combination for someone who's hard of hearing. Let's get him on. Let's get him on an internet show. All right. Well, we've got also, just FYI, we've got a little video from Christina Gomez because she wanted to be here, but she gave us a little video that gives us her score on the show. But let's get into it, you guys. So we got episode 5, and yeah, this was like I feel like it was like almost like a laid back episode in terms of they kind of went back through the 3 seasons and revisited some things, and then bringing back John Alexander sort of just emphasized that of let's bring people who've been here before and then ask and pick their brains and see what they tried and what they did. The episode starts Dragon finding a down cow, and this cow is acting a little aggressive, a little strange, and so yeah, let's start there. Rather, what did you think of this sort of first scene as we started the show?
It was interesting. I mean, the cow definitely looked like it was acting abnormally. And maybe you can kind of fill in some details. I wasn't quite sure. They brought the rancher in who was like taking the cow off the ranch, off to home. So I didn't really understand the whole, like, who owned the cow and why it was there and why it was going off
the rancher owns the cow.
And the cow was just hanging out at Skinwalker.
Basically, yeah, well, no. So basically, that's what happens on some farms. Is some people have animals to graze, specifically for grazing. So they can go out to places like Skinwalker where they don't normally have cattle or livestock, and they essentially rent the cows from the rancher to make sure that the shrubbery on the ranch is controlled through, because they're eating, and they just put them in different parts of the ranch and they graze, and so that's my understanding, is that the rancher literally rents the cows to them, and then when something goes wrong, they could call the rancher and he comes out and he's like, all right, let's just take this thing back to our ranch and see what happens. But
that makes sense. And they didn't really ever tell us what happened to the cow when they brought it off the ranch, did they?
No, they didn't. They never came back to it, but maybe we'll come back to it in a later episode, I'm hoping. I mean, they usually don't do that with this show in particular. Usually when something's shown, I've rarely have they. I mean, this episode was kind of
Chekhov's cow. Yeah.
It was like bringing back some of that stuff, but I'm interested to see. Like, I hope they do follow up because I am interested. But Jane, what did you think of the first scene?
Well, I think Travis Taylor said it best. It's not that I wrote it down. It's not that mysterious for a cow to get sick on a ranch. So I think I was a little bit confused because on one hand they were like, nothing has ever happened to any of the cows ever. So are all the cows just really healthy? Because there's a lot of cows, right? Or was this an anomaly, right? And so there was a little bit kind of, and if how often, I don't know. I would like to talk to a rancher. I mean, the rancher that owned the cows agreed that it was unusual, but we never got the conclusion. Like, did the ailments go away when the cow went back home? Did a veterinarian take a look and conclude, yeah, this is a problem that cows have, and it's just a normal thing, right? So we never got the answer. But yeah, I mean, it's particular. I'm curious how much time really lapsed between that and when the cattle were all mooing together and reacting right to the rocket experiment. So I'm not sure how much time lapse, but I'm curious about that. But
yeah,
it's interesting.
well, Jazz, you have some experience with animals like this, right? I mean, you kind of grew up. Now, I wouldn't say on a farm. Am I misrepresenting that? How would you describe it?
I grew up on a truck farm, which is vegetables and stuff, but my summers, my entire family were farmers. We grew up in farm country, and I had one uncle who had a dairy farm and one who had a cattle and beef ranch. I worked there. So yeah, I have some experience. And probably for that reason, I had the most questions about that segment of the entire show that I'll share with you. What that cow was doing is not normal for a healthy cow that's out there undisturbed and walking around. But at the same time, cows do go down. And if you work on a ranch, ranchers actually call those cows downers. Downer cows are cows that you're raising to either be dairy stock, not in this case, or beef stock. If they go down on their own and die of natural causes, you can't sell them anymore. You just lost all the money because
Yeah.
it's illegal to sell a downer cow, because that's good health policy, really. But, I want to know, the cow wasn't that big. That was a young cow. It wasn't a calf, but that wasn't a big mature cow either. So maybe it had something, but it could have something wrong with it that it, could be put down. My questions were, did any other cows go down? Were there any more that were like that? Jane brought up one of the questions I had. When the cow was taken off the ranch and back to the owner's ranch, did the cow just recover? Because that would be not, freakish, but it would be an unusual piece of data to look at, because if a cow's actually going down like that, usually the cow's in a lot of trouble, you know. So yeah, I had questions about that, and I would like to know the age of the cow. Had it had the proper veterinary care? Was it just normal until that day when that thing happened and suddenly it was going down? Yeah, you add that with Jane's question. If they took it off the ranch and it just recovered, I would find that weird. If the cow went home and died, then I'd be like, oh, your cow picked up a disease, and I hope the rest of the cows don't get it too. So not that terrible, but yeah, we could use more data, I believe. And mostly that's my big question was, I had it written down right here, the one that Jane asked, when the rancher took it back, did it recover? But yeah, those aren't their cows. I interviewed two people who worked at Skinwalker, as you know, in the years after the original investigation was over, but before Brandon Fugel took over. And they talked about that. There were always cows, and it wasn't just one ranch. There's like 2 or 3 ranches in the area, and they would make extra money off of the ranch because they would send their cows over and they would go and keep the grass down and things like that. So it's a pretty typical arrangement. So it wasn't a ranch that raised cows, but it was a ranch that had cows most of the time. So I think that's some good backdrop for everybody listening to understand why the cows were there, why they were doing what they were doing. Cows do weird stuff sometimes. I've been out there just taking out hay at times when it was a very short season, and cows will sometimes just be totally lackluster, and other times they get really aggressive. And if it's in a mating phase, the males will get aggressive. So maybe, but that was a young cow, so I'm not sure. Yeah, I had a lot of questions about that too. I hope they do revisit that, or at least maybe in a future episode, if we get Dragon back, see if he has any information on that, because I found it curious.
My grandparents had aggressive cows. I have a very terrifying memory of, I think it was chasing the dog or that was chasing me. I don't know, but I had to like go under a fence and everything. That cow was after me. I don't like cows. Like if there's like a big group of cows, I'm going to walk very, very carefully and sheepishly around them.
Yeah,
I'm a
no,
little
I've never
biased,
had
I
a
guess.
I've never had a bad experience with a cow, nothing like that. And I've been around a lot of cows, but yeah, I mean, there was definitely something off about that cow. It seemed like it was wobbly. There was something not right. But I would think if there was other cows that had also had gone down, I feel like we would have heard about that.
Right.
So that's kind of what leads me to believe it was just this one cow. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question especially for like Dragon when he comes back.
And if it was just the one, like Lou just said, well, that's sort of if you get a bad disease, and I think we just lost him. If you get a bad disease going in your herd, the odds of one cow getting it are pretty low because they're very communal animals. They're always bumping up against each other. And, even aside from mating and all that, the cows are always interacting and if it was just a disease, it would be really odd if just one young cow got it and none of the other cows did. So I think if it was just the one cow, then that's worth exploring a little further. A veterinarian would tell you that that's odd.
Well then, okay, so that was the cow. So that was an interesting way to start the episode.
Yeah.
But then we got Colonel John Alexander, who
Are we going to talk about the cows again?
If you want to, why? Is there something that we missed?
No, not necessarily, but just kind of trigger warning. I got some.
Yeah.
I went through some of the kind of
okay
reports and stuff I had, and then I have an article from the Oklahoman on my phone from 1990s. But I want people to consider the cattle mutilation backdrop behind this, right? And that there's a lot of people go into assumptions that cattle mutilations are alien. And there's been a lot of research into this. And obviously there's the ongoing debate about different predators and the predators. There's some weird eating habits. I bet we have more to uncover. There's actually a bird I was reading in the Galapagos Islands that literally sucks the blood out of its prey. But I want to bring up, because it's something I don't see a lot of, Eve, I couldn't see it in this literature, but it was in this Oklahoman article for the 1990s. There have been many cases of satanic rituals that were pretty much proven to be behind some of these really horrible cattle mutilations. And you can line them up to dates on a calendar to try to learn more. So I hate talking about this particular part of the field. It makes me nervous that they're associated with crop circles, because then you're like, oh man, well, what are crop circles? Because there's some research there. I don't really like talking about cattle mutilations, but that's a backdrop though, because if we go in, assuming cattle mutilations are alien, and we're just going in with like an alien hypothesis, where it could be, I think it's kind of scarier to think it could be people, but we have to remember that just because that's kind of what started all this, right? Like that's why we're curious about the cows, right? It's the cattle mutilations. So
right.
I know part of it.
Yeah, I know.
The other part is, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Jess.
Now, there's definitely that implication, and they did bring up in the show one previous instance where there was a bad mutilation that was reported that was associated with Skinwalker Ranch. This was not a cow that we saw was being mutilated. This wasn't a cow
thankfully
that we even saw had died. But I've researched the cattle mutilation stuff, and yeah, there's a lot of questions to be answered. A lot of it doesn't necessarily point to UFOs or anything like that. Some of it might, but yeah, they no, I didn't take the note down about that, but I'm not looking at that as a cattle mutilation story. I made the note that said, because they had the quote right in the show, that we use the animals as biosensors. And what I wrote down was, well, if you're using your animals as biosensors, sometimes sensors fail, So it didn't necessarily have to have anything to do with mutilations. It's just like, well, you might have had a sick cow,
Yeah, it could be something just as simple as that. Maybe that's why they didn't go back to it. That could be possible too. It could have been something as simple as, oh yeah, it just got sick and it died.
But they should have come back. That should have been that's Skinwalker, ranch.com, right? Skinwalker/ranch.com. let's put. I mean, they probably couldn't
Follow
put the
that cow,
veterinary
yeah.
report. It may put the veterinary report in there, whatever. I don't know, but
Well, I know I was going to say earlier, I know Stephen Greenstreet is one of the episodes of the Basement Office is his deep dive into cattle mutilations. And it's funny that you talk about the sort of satanic rituals, but that was a thing back in the 70s.
yeah,
And it was a thing that also, I think people also don't realize this, like getting on your local television station by doing a prank or something like that was a thing to do in the 70s. Like that was a big deal
Yep.
to prank your local news station. And some people did it with cattle mutilations, which is just sick to think of. But when you tie that with the occult, you can see how that can sort of spiral into something
yeah.
that grows a lot bigger than it really is.
Yeah, the Oklahoman article was from the 90s, and that was seemed to be a string, and then this is 80s, 90s. So but 70s were, I think, like a peak of that. Yeah.
Well, Logan Black says it's still a thing in our chat here, and I don't know if it is. Not like it was in the 70s. I mean, not to a point where the FBI is still looking at it. Like I'm pretty sure they stopped looking at it for a while. Don't worry about the caps, but
I hope it's not. Thankfully, I'm not getting terrifying, emails, those pictures in my emails.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Email box.
It
There were
feels
some
like
in
something
Oregon
that doesn't
last
happen
winter.
as much.
So
Some in Oregon last winter.
Yeah, there was 5 or 6 that I picked up, and I didn't publish anything anywhere. But yeah, there was like a half dozen or so last winter in the Northwest, and then it seemed to fade off again. But you still see the reports.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Like you said, I was going to high school and going into the military in the 70s, and I remember the Satanic Panic, and a lot of that stuff turned out to be nonsense.
Right.
There were groups of children that were accusing school teachers, and it turned out to be complete nothing, that they were trying to satanize them or turn them into sex cults or things. And it was just kids that were doing stuff to get attention or to get back to their teachers or things. Not saying everything's fake, but
Right.
some of it looked like it really was.
All right. Well, I mean, anything else on the cow?
Oh no, I'm happy to move on from that topic, but I just think it's like the elephant in the room that to address. It's like
for
kind
sure.
of the haunting context, behind all of it.
No,
right?
I mean, especially anything with a ranch, I feel like it's almost like where I'm just waiting for them to show up one day in a cow's like they've said where you hear the stories of like animals. It seems like something crushed it from above and just splat it out all over the.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to see that, but I kind of want to see it because I'd like to see how a film crew would handle that and who would they bring in and see what sort of the scientific method is to figure out how this animal ended up like this. But were you gonna say something rather?
I mean, just death in nature can look weird and mysterious to us. It doesn't necessarily mean that there are UFOs or satanic things going on. It's nature is weird.
Nature is weird.
You should have seen these vultures tear apart.
I'll pass.
It was in our street, like right by our window. It was in Hawks Joint. It was crazy.
You know what I've learned recently, and I didn't really know this. Seagulls are really aggressive carnivores. Essentially, they're vicious. Like I've heard, and recently I've heard of like seagulls attacking small animals or children, and messing them up pretty bad, pretty quickly, especially if you get a flock of them. I mean, those beaks they've got are not dull. But yeah, and they're not small birds either. Like a full-grown seagull is not a small bird. So it could mess some stuff up.
And just so you know, so people know, we've got Spectrum TV here.
Hey, Spectrum.
Doing some stuff with me today.
You better be on your best behavior.
Dylan Scott from Spectrum in the background.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So let's move on to John Alexander, because I think that was a pretty cool part of this episode. John Alexander, of course, was part of NIDS, or he's a colonel as well. It's got a lot of bona fides that come with his name, and he was part of the research development with Bob Biggle in the 80s and 90s. Or not 80s, I don't think it went as far back as the 80s, but definitely in the 90s. And they bring Colonel Alexander onto the ranch. And the one thing that I thought it was funny when he said, especially when they were telling him about all the frustrations with the experiments that they're having, he's like, you got to understand, it is in control, not you. So I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting. But yeah, Jazz, I'm curious to know, what did you think of Colonel John Alexander's visit to the ranch? And there was also another cool part where he explains when they go out to the ranch, he describes it almost like, I'm sure everyone here has seen the movie Predator from the 80s. The awesome John McTiernan film with Arnold Schwarzenegger. But when the Predator first starts revealing itself, it's almost in a camouflage, see-through, like I don't even know how to explain it. It's
cloaking kind of thing,
like a cloak, cloaking device. And he explained that how they were able to see this thing move through the trees. But I'm curious, what did you think, Jazz, when Alexander showed up to the ranch?
I thought it was great to have him on there. I thought it added to the entertainment score. It gave some good background, certainly somebody with credibility. I didn't think it added a lot to the science score, personally. He's reciting recollections, from when he was there before and other experiences that he had. He was providing contributions. His contributions were mostly speculative, and there's nothing wrong with speculating. That's what we're all doing about this. Everybody's speculating, and he's somebody speculating from the perspective of somebody who's been there and who's seen some weird things. It's like, well, yeah, we saw like a distortion going through the trees, and I thought it was interesting, but because we don't have a recording of that to show, it's again, it's testimonial data.
Right.
And his opinion, well, you think you're in charge. That really hit me. You think you're in charge, but you're not. It's in charge. Well, we've heard that from plenty of people, right? But again, not really a science score thing. It's like, well, maybe it's in charge and it's outguessing you. Maybe it's just something that you haven't figured out yet because they're smarter than you, right? Um, I I enjoyed it. I just didn't think, he wasn't there to crack the case open, in my opinion.
Okay, wow, we just got $100 donation from John Alexander.
Aw.
I'm trying to find it here. Did you pin it by
John
chance?
Russell, I think, not
John
John
Russell.
Alexander.
I'm sorry. Yeah, not John
Wow.
Alexander. I'm sorry, you guys. I am sick today. Like, I am genuinely under the weather today. I had to pump a whole bunch of Dayquil, so I'm just not my usual self. But John Russell, thank you so much, Psychic and Arthur, for the donation. He says, let's ramp this sucker up. I need $100 to make you holler. Keep up the good work, you guys. Appreciate it, sir. Truly.
John's always doing great for us.
He's always
guy.
treating this show very, very well. So we appreciate it. Jade, what did you think of Colonel Alexander's visit to the ranch?
Yeah, I mean, I really just agree with Jazz. He said it really well. It was entertaining. It was really cool to hear his perspective. It's credible in that he was the first employee of NIDS. But I was looking into NIDS a little more, and Colm Kelleher, is that how you pronounce his name? I mean, you guys know him.
Yeah.
He has a quote about NIDS where he's like, we don't study aliens, we study anomalies. And I do think something that John Alexander's doing, and he's Colonel John Alexander, he's totally entitled to have his own opinions about things. But it's like when we talk about something moving through the sky and having a bit of distortion, and there's no data and there's no video, and that's somehow evidence of a portal. It's kind of, it's like, just because you say something's a portal over and over and over again doesn't make it so. Doesn't mean we have
Right.
any more science today than we did yesterday proving that. And that's just a thing that I think we're going to find is going to be frustrating throughout the season. And I think we'll look to the website and those other, like external like interviews to learn more, to get really to the science of it. Because remember, to do a proper science experiment, you have to actually have a hypothesis. And I don't think we've ever really had a specific hypothesis that can be tested. It's just like, let's do some stuff, and then when weird stuff happens, we'll capture it and we'll speculate about it. It's not like, this is what we think would if it was a portal, it would do this. If we did that, it did that. There's never
it almost
experiments. Yeah,
it's almost as if we're getting the hypothesis after we run the experiments, because I
which
feel like
is okay.
the one that keeps coming up, at least from Travis Taylor, is either A, they're getting hacked, or B, something is trying to communicate at that level. So, okay, if that's the hypothesis, then we have to start testing that. But yeah, rather, what were you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was...
Jane, blink twice if the weird guy with the camera behind you is doing something threatening and you're in danger.
I tried to blink twice and I blinked like 6 times.
So you're really in danger. Okay, somebody call 911.
Somebody call Texas 911. We have no idea where Jane lives. She's somewhere in Texas. Oh my God. Somebody was asking, guys, I got a terrible pimple on my nose here. I didn't get punched in the face. So if you're wondering why I look so rough, it's just I'm sick and I'm breaking out, so it's all terrible. But I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Rather, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, no, I didn't know John Alexander was going to be on today, so it was a cool, awesome shock to me of just having met him a couple days ago to see him on one of my favorite shows here. So cool. I thought it was very cool. And John Alexander, not only did he do NIDS in the 90s, but he was part of he ran the government's advanced theoretical program or physics program in the 80s, which was essentially the precursor to OSEP and ATIP. They did a lot of the exact same things. So, he's, I was looking around the crowd at SCU. John Alexander seemed the most similar to the cigarette smoking man from the X-Files out there. So, I thought it was really, really cool. So I love seeing him on there. I was a little bit disappointed by the evidence that he gave of his NIDS studies. From his entire experience at NIDS, it seemed like the really 2 things that stood out from his experience were, a mutilated cow and then a kind of a weird apparition, something moving through the trees. And then, the trickster kind of thing, not being able to capture any more evidence. So, there wasn't anything like, the dog men staring at him or things coming out of portals or any of the more
no dino beavers.
No dino beavers. None of that real high strangeness that we've heard about from the NIDS. He either didn't experience that or wasn't telling us about it. So, yeah, I found that a little bit underwhelming.
Well, the one thing he said that I found interesting is that when they started NIDS, they went to the ranch looking for UFOs, and then they found something else. It turned out to be this all-encompassing, just weird thing, and to a point where he was even saying the phenomenon was predicting their experiments. And like you said, almost like that trickster element where it's like, oh, you're going to try and find us? Well, get a load of this,
this?
And they're like, I don't even know what that is. What do we do with that?
It's impossible to disprove, but it could very well be true.
Yeah. Well, what's also interesting about the timing of this too, you meeting John Alexander is, and I can't wait to get the story behind this. And let's see if we can get Stephen Greenstreet on, but he just went to Skinwalker Ranch this weekend. So I'm curious to know, that's because the thing that I loved about it is that when he came out of the weekend, he came back, he was like, I appreciate Brandon Fiegel and his openness and willingness to answer all of my questions, or at least attempt to. And you gotta love that, especially with someone as hard ass as Stephen Greenstreet. The fact that he can appreciate the openness and the transparency that Brandon is genuinely attempting to do, to a point where he's like, come out to the ranch, I'll put you in my helicopter, I'll fly you out there. You just got to get here. And
he teased that there was something unusual that happened while on his stay out there too. So that's coming.
I missed that
at some point.
Yeah, something unexpected, I think was the word.
Whatever he said.
He used.
I don't like teasers like that. Yeah, but he did kind of imply that.
Well, I'm interested to hear sort of what happened.
What are the odds? What are the odds that we could get him on UCR to talk about it? He probably.
I think okay. I mean, last we spoke, we were all right. I don't know. He's been tough. He's been like, I've said nice things about him and gotten yelled at by him. I was just like, dude, like, what's going on here? Like,
he's a lightning rod these days.
He's a lightning rod these days, and I want to like his work, but at the same time, like, some people in this community make it very difficult for you to like them, and like on a personal level, and enjoy them outside of their work.
Yeah, I'm curious what a lightning rod like that, like, would he have an experience at Skinwalker Ranch? Because I feel like if this is an intelligent phenomenon, and there's my maybe they would mess with Steven, I feel like.
I was hoping they would.
I think I would mess with Steven.
I was hoping they would. I was hoping if something does happen, I hope it happens when Steven's there, because he'll at least report on it.
Exactly.
As transparently as possible. I mean, dude, I don't know if you guys listened to his discussion with John Greenwald a few weeks back, but at the end of that discussion, he was talking about a dream that he'd had when he was a young child. But him and his brother had shared essentially the same dream, and it was very reminiscent of a lot of abduction stories. And it's like, damn, like, this guy he is a believer. I think he does. And of course, he was very much like, I got to be careful when I say this. I think his end result or conclusion was it was a dream, but this idea that he had a very vivid dream that he even asked his brother about, and they both, if I remember the conversation correctly, they both have recollections from that. Which is unusual, because usually you don't share dreams with people, the same dream. So there are those moments where I'm like, damn, this guy's awesome.
Just so you know, he has more than that. I've had discussions with him in public, in private, and now I think everybody knows at this point that Stephen Greenwald had a sighting of a large black triangle a while ago that he still can't explain. It doesn't line up with him. But it went a lot deeper than that. When all this stuff about Skinwalker and the book that came out, I think I've mentioned this on this show before. If I've never written about it, but I've mentioned it on a couple other podcasts. My wife and I have had this experience going on since last September at our house, and online, right on Twitter. It wasn't in DMs or anything. I brought that up at one point, and Stephen Greenstreet was like, really? Tell me more. And I was like, is this a trick or something? And he turned around and he told me about experiences that he and his brother had, not dreaming, where he had seen like purple shadow figures as a child, and they saw them together and talked about them and things like that. And it was in the context of, between November of 2020 and last August, my wife and I told everybody we've seen some UFOs and stuff. And then we've had this weird thing in our house. It's still going on today, by the way. And he asked me about it, and we went and had a long conversation about it, And that really has changed my opinion when somebody says, oh, well, there's bulletproof wolves and dino beavers. And I'm like, well, okay, maybe, because you can't explain everything you see, right? And I've got a lot more tolerance for people with stories like that. So if I heard John come out, Greenwald or Greenstreet, not Greenwald, sorry, and say, well, I got a big problem with anybody that sees anything weird. It's like, well, dude, you've been pretty open with a lot of us, and you've seen some really weird stuff too. I've gotten to the point where, where do you draw the line? It's like, oh, we all enjoy Skinwalker Ranch. Oh, I'm okay with, weird UFOs showing up and odd radiation spikes and bulletproof wolves. But dino beavers? No, that's a bridge too far.
Right.
And I think I've kind of reached the point where it's like, okay, I find the idea of dino beavers weird, but then again, I've seen some weird shit too. So I don't know.
I find it fascinating.
I don't know where he's going.
No, I don't either, and I think that's the thing is I find fascinating that he's had these experiences. He's told people about them, and I just wouldn't expect somebody with those kinds of stories to be so critical and question every little thing that comes, and this is a good thing. Again, we always want to ask questions, but just how aggressively he does it. It's almost like, dude, wait a second. Weren't you abducted, or did you see a UFO, or like why? Like it's an interesting dichotomy for sure.
I was just gonna say, in Greenstreet's, defense, he was raised Mormon, so he has like a very interesting perspective growing up with a lot of beliefs that, he challenged and changed. And I think that he probably sees a lot of parallels in the religious communities and the UFO community. So I can kind of see where he, has that, knee-jerk reaction to a lot of stories and a lot of things that the UFO community kind of takes at face value.
Right.
I don't think we should be painting a brush on Mormons like they're all crazy or bad or something.
No.
Well, no, that's not what I was trying to say either. But he had a different belief system that it has changed.
Well, I mean, is anybody here a Christian?
Well, no, I was going to say real quick. Stephen Greenstreet has publicly acknowledged his struggle with the Mormon Church and how he had to essentially leave it. And that caused a lot of personal issues between family and friends, and that's if you grow up in that church and then you kind of get out of it, most of the times I feel like people who looking back on it don't look back on it with fond memories. They kind of look at it as, I think, like Stephen Greenstreet does, where like, oh, you kind of fooled me for a long time and I'm pissed off at that. But yeah, I agree. I don't think we should paintbrush any religion or religion,
and if you're a Christian, let's face it, if you're a devout Christian, you may not believe in UFOs, but you believe that there's somebody that you can't see that's up there in the skies, and they sent somebody down to this planet walking among you who then rose from the dead. I mean, that's a pretty good description of something that would, if you took all the religion out of it and say, oh, I got a guy in Mysterious Universe this week that just had this happen, that would be a paranormal event.
Right.
So I think we should have some tolerance for people's beliefs, because a lot of this stuff is outside of the normal material component of how we view the universe in contemporary material science, is all I'm saying.
That's fair.
One of my best friends growing up, and shout out Jerry, she was Mormon, and her family, her big family, they were the coolest family, and they still are today. I've only had positive experiences with Mormons, so shout out all you awesome Mormons out there that you've put a good reputation for yourselves out there. I think a lot of people could say, yeah, every Mormon I met has been a nice person. I think that's a lot. Like, how many groups can say that? But I think I like what Jazz is saying there, and I know it's a little off topic, but I like to think of, I consider myself a super spiritual person. I love Christianity. I love all really, I like all those ancient texts and religions and perceptions. But the way I think of it is, we are navigating through a reality where most of what reality is, we don't know. We don't understand it. So we're navigating in the dark, and there's not 20 years, we're still going to be in the dark. And so that's where religion comes in. That's where the spirituality comes in, because most of the reality that we're operating in, functioning in, making decisions in, we don't understand more than, probably like 90% really. It's so limited. So our day-to-day experience, we're regularly interacting with this bigger unknown that even if we chip away at science, 20 years in, we're only going to get so far. So I think people do, fall back on, things like Christianity or, Mormonism or whatever. And it, in a reasonable way, I guess, if that makes sense.
To make one quick exception, by the way.
Yeah.
Again, nothing against Stephen, nothing against Mormonism. So many good people. I will do a carve out and go, okay, I have a problem, and this is not all of them. It's probably not even the majority by any sense. But the old men who marry a dozen or 2 dozen 8 to 15-year-old girls, that's a okay, I have a problem with
I
that.
haven't met anybody like that.
Anybody that doesn't like me having a problem with that, bring it on, because that's an issue. Okay.
Definitely.
But for most of them that are just, going out there and trying to spread the word and grow their families, grow the church and all that, no problem whatsoever. I have Jewish friends, atheists, every group. The child molesters bother me a lot, and I think they should bother everyone.
Yeah.
So
thumbs up.
Yeah, thumbs up
No
on that. No
disagreement.
argument here. No argument here.
Let's
All right,
be
so
fair,
before we get too
completely
deep into
agree.
that, let's go on to the next
I
thing
just
that happened.
derailed the whole friggin' show.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
that's all right. That's all right. Well, I mean, that's gonna happen.
Hey, we started talking about religion. I mean,
Yeah.
what do you?
Yeah, you're going into deep waters.
Yeah.
All right, so then the next thing that happens on the ranch is they dig. We go back to digging, which I was
when we
kind of
figure out
excited about.
the rumor about digging the it was caused by Niz dug before, which I didn't know.
Dug. Yeah, I didn't know either. And so so that was interesting to hear John Alexander say, yeah, I think that'd be a pretty good spot to dig. So they whip out the bulldozer, and just seeing a couple of gold digging shows, because I am a fan of the show. It's a pretty big bulldozer. I mean, it should have no issues going through that piece of property with the blade down. But the thing dies in the middle of the field. The batteries die on this bulldozer, which is like,
Again.
come on, right? Like it's almost comical at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and if I heard correctly from them talking about it, they just put 2 brand new batteries in it. Had 2 brand new batteries. So why it's cutting off?
That's not questionable to me, but okay.
Yeah, it was the one thing where I was like, well, is this just an old bulldozer? Maybe that's just having mechanical issues. And I cannot imagine that this thing, the batteries just died in the middle of using it. But I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on it. Jane, we'll start with you.
I mean, it's just definitely that theme of just things keep breaking, nothing's working, and is that going to be the ultimate conclusion, at the end of this, or is it just difficult to do science? And I don't know. So I'm curious if this phenomenon could be intelligent versus something natural or even boring, quote unquote, like just radiation from something going on that's natural or unnatural. But I'm not quite there yet. With the bulldozer was interesting, but it seems like they were able to do everything else this particular episode. So
yeah,
we'll just see.
Interesting. Jazz, what did you think about the bulldozer? You said it's a little suspect.
Yeah, I hate to throw shade. I do think, start with the positive first. There's been so many other tech failures,
right,
of telescopes, of
especially
all
batteries,
sorts of things, batteries in particular. So yeah, that's right. But the bulldozer shows up, and again, people who don't follow me on Twitter don't realize I'm sitting here every day watching my entire block being torn up by huge pieces of construction equipment. And I've worked in construction when I was younger, and they were like, well, we just replaced both of the batteries before we did this. I could see checking both the batteries, particularly with everything that's been going on with equipment going out. It doesn't take long to check a battery. There's a very cheap piece of machinery. You can put 1 positive, 1 negative lead and give me the battery health. You can do that. Batteries are expensive, particularly on those huge machines. Would you really have brought a working bulldozer of that size out there to the ranch and then said, oh, we should probably go throw out 2 batteries that we're perfectly fine to get us over here and put new ones in because ghosts or whatever? And I'm not saying they didn't, maybe because of all the other experiences, they were like, let's spend the money, and Fugal has money, let's go ahead and just put some fresh batteries in. Maybe that's what happened. But all I'm saying is it tickled me a little bit in the back of my mind. Like, would you really have just gone and torn out 2 working batteries that cost, batteries of that size, by the way, you're talking $250, $300 more dollars per battery, because they're not like your car battery, they're big batteries,
right?
And just replace them just because you're about to go dig a 5-foot trench in the middle of a cow field. I'm not saying it didn't happen.
Yeah,
we're here to discuss the show. That caught my attention just for a moment, and I was like, well, that seems kind of convenient. So that took a little bit off my science score. I think.
Yeah, I think I was kind of like, something about this part of the show but feels a little, I don't want to say contrived, but
Staged.
it felt a little staged. It's like, but why? Why would they stage it?
I
That's
don't
my
know.
whole thing.
I
It's
don't
like,
know.
why? I don't think they need to do it. If anything, and I think this is where, from a viewer's perspective, and just again just trying to step back and saying, okay, look, we've talked to Brandon, we've talked to Dragon, we've talked to all these guys, TJ Allard, and they all say the same things, and we've seen it over and over and over and over and over again, especially with batteries. We've seen it on drone batteries. We've seen it on GPR, ground penetrating radar batteries systems.
Yep.
We've seen it on cars. We've seen it on now a bulldozer. So part of me was like, God, this is such bullshit. But then the other part of me is like, well, at this point, why would I doubt this? Like, it doesn't make any sense to put something that heavy in the middle of a field only for it to just sit there. They're gonna have to move it back at some point, right?
How much winds up on the cutting room floor? We talk about this
right,
all the time.
all the time.
That could have
all
been
the
a
time.
very logical explanation that they had a discussion, and it's like, yeah, this bulldozer's working great. We've had all these battery problems. This one's been running for a while. Maybe we should slap a couple more batteries in there. I mean, that could have happened, right?
Yeah.
But I just wanted to bring it up, so we're all being honest. It
That's a
did
good
seem
point.
a little convenient.
What'd you say? What'd you think, rather?
Well, if they have the foresight to replace the batteries, you would think that they'd have the foresight to kind of maybe bring some battery replacements along with them as well. And I guess, my question to you, Jazz, because you might know about this a little bit more, is, I mean, it seems to me that bulldozers probably run like old cars where you have gas that does most of the actual work, and maybe you have an alternator that would charge the battery, and that the battery is, for ignition and stuff like that. So can't they like jumpstart it, or like,
well, they're
if it
almost
was
all
running
diesel.
once?
They're almost all diesel. So
would that not have an alternator that would charge the battery then once you actually get it running once?
You have an alternator to charge it, but you don't need the electronic spark to light the fuel in a diesel engine. You just need to turn the pistons. The pistons create the pressure that explodes the diesel, and that's what gets it running. But if the battery dies, yeah, you're still not doing the initial turn. That's a technical point, I realize. But
well, here's also something that we have to discuss, because we've got about 10 minutes left until Jane's got to go. Real quick though, there was a radiation spike at the exact same time that this bulldozer went down, and Penny Day Treasures had a great question asking, is there a high radiation spike that can drain a battery? I've never heard of that. I mean, and that's a good question. I have no idea. I have no idea. I don't think so, but what are you going to say, rather?
I say it's plausible. Ionizing radiation could go into a battery and cause chemical reactions to happen that maybe wouldn't have otherwise happened. But I don't really know.
Well, okay,
if it acted like an EMP, I agree with rather. Yeah. If there was something that was acting like an electromagnetic pulse, that can just wipe out a whole bunch of electrical stuff. But then the phones they were using and the devices, they wouldn't work either to register the pulse. Everything would have died. I'm not the scientist. Let Rather answer that.
No. Well, Rather, you're the scientist for sure.
Yeah, I'm not a scientist either. But
we vote for you to be the scientist of all four of us.
You are now the scientist of the show. Congratulations.
Yeah, confirmed. Yeah, the radiation spike caused it.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so the tractor dies. They decide, and I think part of this was like, shit, it's hot out here. Let's just come back tonight.
I had the same thoughts.
I felt like it was so hot out there, and they were just like, you know what, let's just do this at night. We can launch another rocket. It'll be fun. We'll do a little barbecue, and let's see what we can come up with. And
Dragon was like, more rockets.
More rockets.
My God.
Yeah, so, and that's what I wrote down in my notes. I go, they go back to dig at night, more rockets, exclamation point. And then a 1.6 gigahertz signal shows up. And nothing crazy happens, but then they go to bed and they wake up to a video that's set off one of the trail cams, and this video shows an orb, looks like an orb, at Homestead 2. Let's quickly go around this and see. I want to get your thoughts on this, you guys, and then we'll get scores. But what did you guys think of this moment? I'll start with you, rather.
I mean, I thought it looked like a moth or maybe like a bird. I know it did some kind of things going behind the trees, so maybe not. But it didn't. I have a night vision camera out, and security camera, and there's a lot of odd stuff that appears on there. It didn't look that crazy to me.
Yeah, Jazz, what'd you think of it?
Total opposite. You could actually see a whole bunch of insects and moths going by on that video, and that's what they look like when something close to the camera zooms by. I've taken videos that I published that included stuff I didn't even see when I filmed it, that just like zip, zip, bing. And if they're a little bit further away, they go by, they're kind of translucent, unspecific. This was something that was far enough away to go in front of one tree, behind another tree. I thought that was a remarkable video. And I was impressed with it. I don't know what it was, but no, that wasn't a bird in the middle of the night, in the middle of the woods. It wasn't a bug in front of the lens, because if it was, then it would have blocked out both of the trees. So it was something of a reasonable size. What was it? No idea. But I watched that and I immediately had flashbacks to the recent thing. I just published a thing of the debrief about the thing you guys talked about on a different show at the Miami Air Show. There were a lot of similarities between that and what was seen at the Miami Air Show, because you look at all the still frames, there were points where it was in front of the ocean, where it was in front of the sky, when it went behind something, when a shadow was cast on it at a great distance. And that speaks to something that wasn't just a bug or a butterfly going in front of it. This is one of my favorite parts of the show, silent-wise. I found the video to be really intriguing.
Yeah, Dr. Taylor estimated it was about the size of a volleyball, according to him.
Round orb.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a rough estimate that he got. But Jane, I'm curious to know what you thought.
Look, I do think it was interesting. I maybe I would feature this, but I think it's a bug. I think it looks like a bug. It behaves like a bug. It doesn't do anything that's actually weird. We're assuming that the only thing that's weird is it would be the size of a volleyball, in the middle of the night, low flying. And those are all deductive assumptions. So I do think it's interesting. Night vision, security camera footage is just so notorious. So the older I get, the less and less I look at that as solid evidence, because it takes me down rabbit holes all the time. And I've been there and been debunked a bunch of times, from thinking something was more mysterious than it was, but it didn't really it behaved like a bug. It looked like maybe even like a lightning bug. Also, I will say I didn't see the part where it went behind the trees. If it actually did, I didn't see what Travis was seeing. And I rewound it and looked at it, and I just saw a straight shot with a blurry night vision footage.
Yeah, watch it again, definitely, because I had the same thought. But when I went back and watched it again and replayed it, there's one tree to the right where it goes in front of the tree. There's a tree to the left, which is clearly far away from the camera, and it goes behind the branches. So that told me that's not right in front of the lens.
Well, the one thing,
Spectrum TV is here, but on my Spectrum app, when I was watching Skinwalker Ranch, I couldn't record it. I couldn't record the UFO, so I wanted to do deeper analysis, Jazz, and I'd be curious to look for going behind the tree, because that would change.
Yeah, and I'll take a second look too, because I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Well, there's two things. The first is that Eric Bard said that he needs to go, but he wouldn't feel good putting this on the table unless he went back and did some video analyzation of it and probably blew it up and looked at it closer. And also, that's something that they didn't edit. Like there was no close-up of the image on the show. They never did a close-up of it. They just showed the whole image, the whole video, without ever zooming in on it. So, which I found odd. I'm like, well, if there's a line in the middle of it, like Travis Taylor saying, zoom in on it so we can see this line, and that was the one thing where I was like, I'm kind of leaning to what you were saying, Jane, where I think we get a little more clarity if we had a zoomed in cropped image of it. You know, so I don't
Right,
want to say
but
one way or the other, but yeah, go ahead,
not to
Jess.
cut you off, Lou, but this wasn't something that he was filming in real time. Like, well, why didn't you zoom in on it? He was like reviewing footage
Right.
from the night
No.
before.
I understand
Nobody
that.
was sitting there like monitoring me.
I totally understand that, but when they edit that episode, they could have zoomed in on that.
And shown the black
zoom
line.
on the
Correct.
existing footage.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or going
mean,
behind the tree, even.
Yeah.
I felt like I didn't like Jazz. I'm glad that you saw that too. What Travis was seeing was it going behind the tree, because I just flat out didn't see it at all. What he was talking about.
It's like on the second or third replay, you watch it go behind.
Yeah,
the tree
this is a
after
video.
It goes in front of the other one. So
this is a
I
video
don't know.
worth looking into more. Like if somebody
sure.
sent me this, I would absolutely put this into an editor and zoom in and
Like this would be a great
Right.
video to upload to the website.
yeah, and
You
yeah,
know?
and I probably would. I would have
Yes.
probably just posted it. You know, if somebody sent me this, I probably would have just posted it for the community to take apart, because they do a great job at that.
They do a great job at it, as we've learned. Let's see here. I think what's going on with Rather's camera battery issues. Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh man.
You
Well, we
might have
can hear
picked up
you.
a hitchhiker at SCU.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
That was actually it.
Yeah.
Rather's been knocked off. Here we go. We have proof.
Yeah.
So,
Yep, he's having battery issues of all things too, which
Yeah.
is very interesting.
Maybe it wasn't a
Um,
bug.
Dino fever at Rather's house.
Well, we've got a couple minutes left, so let's quickly, if we can, just because Jane's got to get at her. She's got a TV crew at her house, showing up to do an interview with her. So
If
I
it's
want to make
TV
sure we
crew
get
and
you out
not
of here on
some sort
time.
of, predators.
So, Jane, what did you think? Scores?
Yeah. Oh man. And how about that radiation spike? I will say, I'll throw this out there. Could there be uranium mining or something, going on right here? Something's going on with the radiation for sure. Yeah, man, this was definitely a more laid back episode compared to last week's. I feel like everything goes down, but you just got to pace the season.
Right.
So, yeah, I would say like a 7 entertainment.
And just FYI, this is the middle episode. This is halfway through the season, this episode.
Right. And 7's still good. I was entertained. I liked, like, I went off on the cattle mutilation stuff. There's a lot of nuggets here that were pretty entertaining to me. I think a 7 I don't know, maybe a 6.5. 6.5. And then I'm going to bring the science down though to like a 3, because they didn't follow that, they did a science experiment. They had one with the cow. There was a follow-up to that. There was an end to that experiment, and they didn't end it in this episode. So maybe it will come in a future episode. Maybe it's a big gotcha. Maybe there's a huge story with this cow. So maybe I'll take this back later. But to me, that was a big science miss, right?
Well, could you imagine if the rancher took the cow back to his place and then a couple days later was mutilated or something?
Oh God!
Like that would be crazy.
We're up to 11.
Well, I'll take back everything I said.
Everything that he just said. Exactly. Well, Jane, it's 4:00. Do you want to get out of here?
Yeah, I'm gonna head out.
Okay.
See you guys tomorrow.
See you
If
tomorrow.
you're being abducted
new
by
time
the
tomorrow,
Spectrum
Jane.
person, send us a message.
Yeah, by the way, you guys, we're on tomorrow at 5. We're switching times for the show, so we're going to 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight. So that'll be 8 p.m. East Coast. So that'll be the start time for the show. So we'll see you tomorrow, Jane. Thank you for being here.
See you guys
tomorrow. Ciao. Jazz, let's get your score. What did you think?
I also thought, not that it was horrible. It wasn't a really sciencey show, so I'm going to drop my science score down a fair bit. It wasn't totally unscientific, but you got to leave room for if they bring more gunpowder later. I'm going to take my science score down to about a 5.
Okay.
I think, which is not terrible. I was still, they talked about interesting things. I think the entertainment was still pretty strong. I certainly enjoyed the guests, and it made room for a lot of interactive stuff. So I'm going to give this one a 5 on science and a 7.5 on entertainment. I thought it's still quite entertaining.
Yeah, I thought we got a couple good faces from the Dragon during this episode. That's for sure.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
Sorry for I'm trying to bring in a tape from Christina, and it popped up, so I didn't mean to interrupt you there. But before we get to that, what were your scores here?
Yeah, I found it highly entertaining. I mean, mostly because of the kind of the John Alexander. I thought that was, really kept me engaged. So, I thought that whole NIDS story and everything and having his perspective was highly entertaining, as well as, the latter half where all the crazy stuff started to happen. So, I might be a little biased from my personal recent experience, but I'm going to go 9 for entertainment. Very, very entertaining. For science, I was, I had a little conundrum of whether are we talking science of natural sciences or are we also including social sciences? Because it almost seemed like a anthropological study of dealing with a unknown intelligence and how do you probe them and get responses back. And so in that respect, I think that it was interesting in doing some potential social science stuff with an unknown intelligence. But as for the actual natural science and the nuts and bolts of stuff, they didn't really run any experiments that could be called scientific. I don't think it was, a lot of interesting stuff, but no, controls, no real, getting to the actually what happened with the batteries or the cows even or anything. So I'm going to focus on the natural science and I'm going to give it a 4 for science.
Okay, that's fair. Too much information, gave it a 5.6. But is that the science score or is that the entertainment score? I'm curious. I'm kind of, well, before we get to my score, let's play what Christina Gomez thought.
But as you're watching this, I am literally at work. Before I do the review for this latest episode, I actually want to do a review on the Skinwalker Ranch Insider. Let's roll the tape. Hey, so this is my setup. Here I have After Effects open. Right here, I actually have the live feed from Skinwalker Ranch when you are an inside member and you're able to see the live chat, which is an amazing community. Everyone is so interactive and so positive. And while I am working right here where my laptop is, right on my television, I can see the live feed of what's going on. And I'm always watching it just to make sure I can catch something pretty cool. And if I didn't, people in the live chat will probably catch it. So before I do the review on the latest episode of Skinwalker Ranch, I actually wanted to talk about the insider membership that Skinwalker Ranch provides. Let me tell you, I'm in love. Not only is the feed fantastic, the live feed, but also their website as well. And let me tell you, it's only $10 a month. Honestly, I would probably pay more for it. I really, really would, because it's so amazing. And I do want to mention, they're not paying me to say this. I'm just saying this because I truly love what they're doing at the ranch, and I like how it's now public, that if you become a member, you're able to see exactly what Eric Bard is seeing. He jumps through the different cameras and the different locations live the same way that we're able to watch it. So that was the first review I wanted to do, but also kind of show you my setup of how I do my work. I got my work and then I'm always watching the feed. Now, as for this latest episode, the first thing that caught my attention is when Colonel Alexander had said, "You're not in control. It is." And this is a concept that is also believed by some of the members at the ranch. Then later on, there was a gamma radiation spike, and during the exact moment that the tractor battery died. So I went ahead and looked at what causes gamma radiation. On Earth, gamma waves are generated by nuclear explosions, lightning, and the less dramatic activity of radioactive decay. In space, they can be generated by the sun in large levels during solar flares. Otherwise, they are produced by the hottest and most energetic objects in the universe, such as neutron stars and pulsars, supernova explosions, and regions around black holes, and maybe even wormholes. Dun, dun, dun. So, what if when they were digging, when they were trying to provoke something, that a portal appeared, creating that intense level of gamma radiation? I mean, I'm not sure, but I wish that it was talked about more in the episode. Then near the end, you had the orb sighting. And Travis had mentioned that it reminded him of the Tic Tac sighting. And while the trail could have looked like vapor or an exhaust propellant, to me, when I paused it and looked at it frame by frame, it kind of looked like it was distorting space behind it. Now, I'm not a physicist, so I don't really know, but I thought of this kind of analogy. When you take a shower and your mirror gets covered in steam, you can draw on it, have it be a heart or a smiley face. So, what if there was a camera on the other side of this two-way mirror and it could only see the pressure of your finger? This is kind of what came to mind, as if there was a finger poking into our dimension from another. So overall, I felt like it was a pretty good episode. For the science score, I give it a 7, and for the entertainment, I give it an 8. But nothing really compares to last week's episode. That's it for me. Remember, keep your eyes on the skies and on Skinwalker Ranch.
There you go. What did you think about that? Anybody? Any thoughts on what Christina's thoughts were? Look at Jazz's face. Jazz, what's with the face, man?
No, I love Christina. I
Yeah.
think she's great. I support. I used to work in nuclear energy, and some of her comments about gamma rays and energy are. I think there's a lot more data that somebody could look into and say that those aren't absolutes that she was talking about. But yeah, I could see how anybody just as an observer could come away with those conclusions if you don't, really work in that area of science. There's almost no place unless you dig down far enough in the earth that you don't get gamma radiation. It's everywhere, and it's produced by God, we can start the list of the things that produce gamma radiation. It's everywhere all the time. But yeah, I can appreciate her take on it, and I do think the part she found entertaining were entertaining, and I think we need younger people to be watching this and going and exploring and asking questions and trying to learn about this stuff because it's all fascinating.
Any thoughts or feedback there, rather?
Yeah, I think it was interesting food for thought. I like the idea of the interdimensional finger pointing through and kind of, having that trail. I thought that was an interesting, thought experiment. And who knows, maybe. And, but ultimately, I need to get on this Skinwalker Ranch website and see some of those streams. She really sold that to me.
Yeah, I haven't signed up yet either. I really need to, but maybe I think make the time.
I was going to sign up, but I was like, you know what? Let me wait about a month. I'm sure there's going to be kinks in this website. They're going to figure them out. And it sounds like they're getting them straightened out. I mean, she's like, I paid more than $10. That's please do not you charge more than $10. But I mean, that's a good thing. I mean, they do have it looks like they definitely have a 24-hour live cam, which is great. I think that's awesome. But we'll do a review on the whole website once the series is over, where we're going to go and review the website as well. So stay tuned for that. So let me give my score, and then we'll get everybody out of here. So yeah, I'm kind of with Jane and you guys a little bit. From a science perspective, there wasn't a lot of experiments started or finished here. We didn't get conclusions to some things. So from a science perspective, I'd say 3.5, almost a 4. And then entertainment value, I'd say an 8, solid 8. I'm probably leaning more toward like 8.5. But yeah, it was fun to watch. I there was a lot of good classic dragon faces, especially when it's like, oh, there's no radiation. That's a good thing, so there was some funny moments with Dragon especially. But yeah, I mean, overall, I thought it was a good mid-season episode. They touched a little bit about what happened in the previous 2 seasons. We got sort of a legend of the ranch in John Alexander, and it looks like next week we're going to get Chris Bartell. So that's kind of cool that they're bringing back people from NIDS and the Bigelow Aerospace part of this discussion because, and we have fun with the sort of the weird part of this ranch on this show, the dino beavers, the weird looking wolf animals, like there is humor in there. And so we definitely are not afraid. Yeah, we're not afraid to explore the humorous aspect of it, but it is cool to see, I can't wait to see Chris Bartell's episode. That's going to be very cool because he spent years on that ranch, years by himself too. So I'm interested to sort of see how they dig into the Chris Bartell aspect of this ranch, because I think there's a lot of rich history that Chris could. I have a feeling that's an episode that I bet I would love to see what hit the cutting room floor, because I bet there's a ton. But we'll get to that episode next week. Other than that, you guys, thank you so much for being here. This was fun.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Chaz, what do you? I know you've got an article out in the debrief right now on the Miami Air Show UFO. So guys, I've got Jazz's
that just
link.
Came up a little while ago. Go ahead and check that out. I have one coming up on Mysterious Universe this weekend about sliders, about people that produce strange electromagnetic effects in their area, like clocks change and street lights go out. And I've interviewed a few people about that. So I'm just finishing that up. So that should be out this weekend.
Cool. Well, Jazz, thank you for stopping by. We'll see you next week, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. We've got a show coming up tomorrow with Carl Vibe. We're going to be talking about the mystery of
Magic Mesa.
The Magic Mesa. So we'll have Carl Vibe on for an hour tomorrow. We'll talk to him, and then you're going to break down the SCU conference for us. Who you talk to, what's going down, your takeaways. I can't wait to dig into all of everything SCU with you. So that should be fun. Let's see what else. Oh, tomorrow our show starts at 5. We got a new start time. This show, I swear, I promise you, I will not change the start time for this show in at least a year. I promise you. You're committed. This is going to be our show time for the foreseeable future, 5 p.m. tomorrow. So join us. It's going to be a new time. We're hoping to get as much support as we can. Thank you everyone out there to tune in. We almost had 200 of you guys in the chat, so appreciate it. We had some great questions today. I also want to say thank you to John Russell for that $100 donation. Unbelievable, sir. Thank you so damn much. I'm sorry if I'm not acting more excited or jubilant. I'm just really under the weather. Joanne Carey had an interesting she said that she's watching from the Channel Islands. So I just wanted to say hello to Joanne. Thank you so much for tuning in from there. Lightning bugs was one of the things that somebody had said for that orb. What do you think? Rather lightning bug?
If it was lightning bug, I think you would see it pulsating or lighting up a little bit more.
Right, going in, yeah. Interesting. And I'm wondering also what time of year that was filmed. Lightning bugs may not even be a thing at that time of year. But yeah, it's not a bad. It definitely, if it went out and turned back on, I think people would be like, okay, lightning bug, because it definitely looks like one for sure. John Hunsley says in the latest episode, Travis calls out that something is broadcasting at 1.6 gigahertz. That's the frequency Intel i5 runs at. They were just reading their own laptop chips. Why didn't they rule that out? What do you think of that? We talked about this a little bit in one of the episodes. But that's a good question.
I think that's a little bit different from like the CPU's processing speed versus like, electromagnetic radiation going out. I don't think that the Intel chip actually emits, signals at that things. I think that's just how fast it operates. But
right.
No, I'm not 100% on that. I haven't done research.
This was a funny comment. Now that I become death, said Christ was the original Dracula. Aaron, sorry, what's happening, brother? Thank you so much for being here. All right, you guys. Well, that's it. We'll see you tomorrow at 5:00. I'm trying to think. Do we have any other show announcements? Dude, my brain is mush today.
Quick one for me. I got a new video out on dark matter, so go check that out and subscribe to Rather Be Squidding.
I have not done anything on the internet today, so I'll go check that out.
No worries.
And we'll talk about it tomorrow. Well, until tomorrow, you guys. Thank you all so damn much for coming aboard, getting weird with us here in another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. I am Luis Jimenez, creator and host, and that is my co-host, Mr. Rather Be Squidding. Thank you to Jane. Thank you to Jazz. I've got everyone's links in the description below, so if you want to go support the channels, please go support. If you want to join our Patreon, it's a great way to support this show as well. If you can't, don't worry about it. All of our shows free. There's no paywall here, so enjoy the show as much as you want. Until tomorrow, love you all. Stay safe out there. Peace.